The Central Coast of British Columbia is one of the most spectacular and biologically rich places left on the planet, where ancient temperate rainforest intertwines with the living Pacific. The 4 First Nations who have inhabited the Central Coast for thousands of years have joined forces, forming the Central Coast Indigenous Resource Alliance, otherwise known as SECURA. Using a combination of traditional knowledge and science, the nations are committed to upholding their Indigenous laws and stewarding these marine resources in a manner that sustains their cultures and ensures intact ecosystems, healthy communities, and local sustainable economies, now and into the future. In 2007, First Nations on the Central Coast began to formally collect their traditional knowledge, local experience, and traditional laws in order to inform their marine use plans. These plans help the nations take a more proactive role in the management of their marine territories and provide a roadmap to support healthy marine ecosystems, human well-being, local economies, and cultural resilience.
First Nations have been working with a lot of different places, such as non-government organizations, a lot of scientists, a lot of community members, in order to try and figure out where the best areas would be for protected area management. So where are the most critically endangered species, what areas are the most sensitive, and how can we protect those? And what areas can we use for economic development?
Prior to any of the marine use plans, there was no management plan for any of these areas, so it was kind of a free-for-all. We watched all these commercial industries come in and just take all the resources, and at a just unsustainable level. So we want to bring some stability to that. We want to bring sustainability to the coast. We want to make sure that there's protected areas, there's refuge areas for certain species to make sure that they thrive. We want to make sure that's going to help protect some of our food resources that our communities are still very dependent on. But we also want to make sure that these plans have a fairly healthy balance. We want to make sure that commercial industry have a place, recreational fishery has a place, and there's a spot for all users, but at a sustainable level. And I think that's the intent of the marine plans.
When we protect our own marine resources, we're setting it off not just for us, but for future generations, where everyone could be using it to harvest and making sure everything stays as pristine as it is now for years to come. And I think it's one of the most important reasons, because we live in such a special place that without some level of protection, without us working together, we wouldn't be able to have this right now or in the future.
So back in 2004, we kind of started up to start developing marine plans in each one of our communities. So basically each one of our communities developed our own marine plans, and then we sat down with the other communities and harmonized those plans, and we came up with kind of sub-regional marine use plans. And the intent was to sit down with the provincial government and the federal government and implement these plans together. And shortly after, the issue of oil tanker traffic on the coast started to ramp up a bit more. I think the Harper government, felt that as a bit of a threat, so the federal government pulled away from the table altogether, and it left this, kind of weaker version of marine planning on the coast. So it left it with the province. So nonetheless, we were hoping that all players would be involved in the marine use planning process, and with the feds pulling away, that left a huge void on the table, because we weren't dealing with some of the major issues that the communities wanted to see in terms of a change, and that fisheries weren't on the table, shipping wasn't on the table. But it was also an opportunity to really focus on our relationship with the province. Where does the province have jurisdiction, and how do we move forward in developing and implementing these marine plans where the province has jurisdiction?
And so from there, we started working with the province, who was interested in working with all the different various nations, to start working together on what we could start pushing forward and implementing under the provincial umbrella.
When we started developing our marine use plans, we interviewed tons of our elders, all of our community members, all of the fishermen, all the people who spend all of the time out there, and they know exactly what's going on in the water. Where people fished, how things have changed over time, whether large gathering of ecological species, all those different things we've compiled and we've put it together. And we started to zone out our territories, in terms of where things are and where things should happen, where they can't happen. But we were able to merge that with some of the existing government data that was out there, and then start to develop spatial zones out of that.
We came up with what was called an ecosystem-based management framework. This is very similar to the way First Nations have managed their territories for thousands of years. And one of the key elements of an ecosystem-based management approach is to create a network of protected areas. right? And these areas perform multiple functions. One, they ensure healthy, sustainable populations. Another is they provide a baseline for science against which we can measure larger changes in climate, the effects of fisheries management, and other decisions on the water.
We looked at how to meet our food needs as one of the major things, because with the decline in all resources, we've found it harder to meet our cultural and food needs.
Each of the nations have held well over 100 meetings within their communities to develop their own community marine plans. Hundreds of meetings at the nation level, meetings between First Nations and provincial governments. And this planning process was replicated in the North Coast, Haida Gwaii, and North Vancouver Island. So it's probably one of the most comprehensive planning approaches in British Columbia. We established a robust stakeholder table that had representatives there from forestry, tourism, public perspectives, commercial fisheries, recreational fisheries. At the end of the day, the stakeholders were very happy with the outcomes of the process.
We finally got to the point where we were happy with the plan and we signed off on the plan. But one of the big pieces that's still missing, of course, is the federal government and their jurisdiction over fisheries, which is a big part of particularly our spatial planning that we've been trying to move forward.
The nations in the province have done a lot of the groundwork from a scientific perspective and with stakeholders, and I think there's a real opportunity here to take the work that's been done, take it the next step, and move that towards a marine protected area network.
We've had a lot of the discussions that needed to be had with the provincial government, with stakeholders, with scientists, and all we need now is to have a conversation with the federal government and have them come to the table in a meaningful and open way.